Good morning, Clearbranch kids. You may remember that the last month or so we have been talking about some amazing but true stories straight from the Bible. We've been working our way through from the very beginning of the Old Testament. And our most recent story was about Isaac, who was born to his parents, Sarah and Abraham, when they were very, very old. And then Isaac grew up and he married a woman named Rebekah, and they had two children of their own. Now, these children were twins, twin boys named Jacob and Esau. And they may have been twins, but they were nothing alike. They looked different, they acted differently, and they didn't even really like each other. The Bible even tells us that they wrestled each other as tiny babies inside their mom's tummy. So Jacob was very smooth, he liked to spend time indoors, and one of his favorite things to do was to cook alongside his mom. And then Esau, on the other hand, was bigger and burly. He had lots of hair on his arms and his legs and his head, and he loved to spend times outdoors, and he was an expert hunter. Well, one day, Jacob had been inside and had made a really gorgeous-smelling stew, while Esau had been outside hunting all day, and he was starving. He hadn't had lunch, and he came inside, and he smelled that stew, and he asked his brother to give him some of it. Well, before we go on, you need to understand something about how things worked in those days. Even though Esau was only older by maybe just a minute or so, he was still the older son. And by being the older son, he was entitled to the birthright. He was entitled to his father's blessing, and he would inherit the leadership role in the family as well as any money or assets that they had. Well, Jacob knew this, and he was probably a little jealous of this. He felt left out because he was just right behind his twin brother. And so that day, when Esau asked Jacob for some of the stew, Jacob saw a chance to be sneaky and to help himself out. And so he told Jacob told Esau, "Sure, I'll give you some of the stew if you'll trade me for your birthright." Well, Esau was kind of known for making snap decisions that weren't really thought through and maybe weren't the best. And so in his dying of starvation, he said, yes, whatever you want, just give me something to eat. And so just that quickly, he traded away that birthright to his slightly younger twin brother. And then later on, as their father Isaac got older, one day Isaac pulled Esau aside because he knew that he wasn't going to live much longer, and he wanted to pass on his blessing to his eldest son. And so he asked Esau to go out and hunt and to prepare for him a meal, and over that meal that he would give him the birthright. Well, Rebekah overheard this, and while parents aren't really supposed to have a favorite child, the Bible tells us that Rebekah very much favored Jacob. And so she saw a chance to be sneaky herself. And so she went and grabbed Jacob and said, "Listen, go and cook this meal for your father, and then go outside and get some animal skins and cover your arms with them. And take this meal into your father, and he'll think you're Esau, and he'll give you his blessing." Well, Jacob was scared, but his mother instructed him to do it. And so he followed her instructions and went in. And sure enough, poor old Isaac was so elderly and so frail, and his eyesight had gotten so poor that he didn't know the difference, and he did give his blessing to the younger son, Jacob. Well, when Esau found out, you can only imagine how furious he was. Well, Rebekah had already planned for this too. Of course, she wanted to protect this favorite child, and so she had already arranged for Jacob to run away to her brother in another land. So Jacob set off overnight, and he traveled. And that night, as he made a place to rest, he dreamed that God came to him and spoke to him. And in that dream, God reminded him of the blessing that he had given to his grandfather Abraham and then again to Isaac, and assured him that he would still bless him. And the next morning, Jacob got up and he built an altar there where he had slept, so that when he traveled through, he would remember that God had promised to continue to bless them. Now, in this story, there are lots of twists and turns, and you can't exactly say that Jacob and Rebekah trusted in the blessing that God had already given to their family. And even in spite of that, where they were conniving and they schemed and they did some things they shouldn't do, God still chose to continue to bless them. And we know that he did because throughout that family line, years and years and years and years later, Jesus was born. So guys, what I want you to remember from this story is that even when it's hard, when we don't know what's going to happen, when we can't see the path ahead, we need to trust that God always has a plan.